Great. Welcome, everybody, to the League of Women Voters of the North Woods, our February 8th program. And I am Pam Taylor, current president of the League of Women Voters of the North Woods. And we welcome you to Who Are They and What Do They Do Now program. We want to give you a little bit of insight into who we are and what we do. And we're going to have some questions and answers as we go along. We understand we operate and discover more ways to be involved with our community through the League. The mission of the League of Women Voters of the North Woods is to help us all develop educated political opinions and act upon them through the democratic process. Our North Woods is a member of the State and National League. As such, we are a nonpartisan organization that does not support any individual parties or candidates. We do, however, study and take positions and actions on issues of concern. We encourage high-quality public discourse to inform public opinion and individual voters' choices. Some of our guiding principles are defending democracy, being nonpartisan, and including diversity of political thought, encouraging participation by all ethnic, religious, and racial sectors of our community, working for justice in our community and country. This program is being recorded, and please mute yourself unless you are speaking. Feel free, and we encourage you to put your questions in the chat. And there is planned time for questions and discussions. Today's program will include a brief history of our local league, short presentations from our committees and teams about their work and purpose, questions from all, an overall history of the league, and more questions and general discussion. We encourage you to reach out to us anytime to find out more about your local league. Our programs, meetings, and contact information is all located on our website. We are going to begin today with a little history from Yo about our league in the North Woods. Yo.
Hi, all. I look back on our records, and the earliest documentation that I could find of our group doing something was in 2011. They were minutes from a meeting that happened. Only maybe 5 people were there, but they talked about how they were going to try to increase membership and diversity. They were going to go to the league, the Learning and Retirement Group, and ask them to do a session on the league. So that's when it got started. It was just a small group, and mainly from Rhinelander, women from Rhinelander. I got involved in 2012, around the time of all the demonstrations that were occurring in Madison and the recall efforts. I remember my first meeting that I went to was at the Oneida County I can't remember what the name of that title is. The Oneida County, whatever, in Rhinelander. But anyway, there were probably 15 people, maybe a few more, a few less than that. And we talked about what a league does, or what a league should do, and what kinds of things that we wanted to do. So I was advised there to become a member of the league, even though we didn't have a chapter of our own in the area. We became members at large associated with the state league. So our first activities in 2012 was a candidate forum for Oneida County Judge. We had a mining forum at Nicolay. We had voter registration activities at high schools, public libraries, that kind of thing. We were encouraged to become election observers. The State League has a program where they train people to go and observe to make sure that things are going the way they should on election day. And then you report back to the state and they compile a report. So that was encouraged. I remember going to my own local and then down to Merrill a couple of times before I became a poll worker myself. We also had the state league representatives come and speak to our group and also to the general public about what the league does. And in November of 2012, we decided as a group we wanted to become an official league. So in January and February of 2013, we met and we gathered the information that we needed, or developed it, whatever we needed to complete our application, which included bylaws, a nonpartisan policy, a list of our members. At that time, we had 17 people, officers that we would want to run things as if we got to be a league, the area that we wanted to cover, the geographical area that we wanted to cover, what kinds of activities we had been doing and what we wanted to do in the future. And of course, a financial plan, which we didn't really know what to do about that. But anyway, we submitted all of our information and documents in March of 2013, and we heard back in June that we were accepted as an official league. So we are a real young group, only 9 years old come June of this year, much younger than the state and national groups. But we are learning as we go along, and we hope that everybody else will learn along with us. But I'll turn it over to Pam now. She will go through who the current officers and board members are. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Yo, a lot. Well, myself, I am the current interim president as well as vice president. Lori Gloak is our secretary, Belinda Holben is our treasurer, and our directors are Jane Banning, Sue Dirksen, Louise Schatz, and Dorothy Skye. Jane, would you talk about our diversity, inclusivity, and justice program?
Yep, thank you. We have been talking a lot recently about diversity, equity, inclusivity, and justice, and we've made a commitment to diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice, and to try to remove any barriers to full participation in the league. And so we intend to try to carry out this commitment in everything that we do, say, and write. So diversity refers to populations or groups that have been historically underrepresented in socially, politically, or economically powerful institutions. We want to reach out to underrepresented or disadvantaged groups in our region, in all of our programming and in our organizational means. Equity seeks to balance different levels of access to resources that stem from oppression and privilege. We want to work to become aware of and responsive to these issues and disparities. Inclusive groups thrive because they are diverse. That just makes sense to us, right? We want to welcome and encourage diverse participation, and that means diversity across the board, in our membership, in our programs, in our outreach, and in our activities. And finally, justice means fairness, right, in the way a situation is handled, and as well as the result. And we want to try to understand better and commit to supporting justice. And to those ends, we are collaborating with a number of nonprofit groups in this region to learn more about and to disseminate information and awareness about DEIJ. So I will pass the mic to Louise Schatz of the Membership Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. So I am here today speaking for the Membership Committee. What does the Membership Committee do? Our job is not to recruit new members. Our focus is on welcoming new members into the organization and helping them to get involved in to the extent that they want to be. Remember, when you join the League of Women Voters, you can be involved as much or as little as you want to be. Currently, the membership committee is reorganizing the materials that are available for new members. We are redoing materials that are needed to send out to new and returning members, and to have these materials accessible for everyone's use. Most of those materials are going to be available on our website so that they could be looked at any time by anyone. We're also developing an onboarding process, which should provide members with information on the different committees that are available, the teams that we have set up, and other ways that people can get involved in the League of Women Voters. One of the things that I would really like to emphasize about being a committee member of any committee, the League of Women Voters, being part of a committee gives you the opportunity to get to know other people who are in the organization. When I joined the League of Women Voters, I didn't know anybody who was a member. And during the few years that I have been a member, I have really enjoyed making new and lasting friendships through the work that we are doing. So the League serves many purposes. And now Cheryl Hobbs is going to tell us a little bit about what the program committee does.
And I will say that Louise is on our program committee as well, so she stays very busy. The goal of the program committee is to inform our members and the public on issues of relevance to the League of Women Voters, and to encourage active participation in our democracy. What do? We plan monthly meetings, which cover a wide range of timely topics, and we seek knowledgeable speakers. Some of our programs that we've had are debunking common myths about national popular vote, a step into public service, how to get there, clean water, broadband in the Northwoods, civil discourse, fair maps, gerrymandering, economic reality of immigration, infrastructure, and redistricting. Our most recent program was on climate change and its impact on species in the Northwoods, presented by John Bates, Northwoods author and naturalist. I think it was an excellent program. 50 people attended that program on Zoom. We are currently a committee of 5 people, and we welcome new members to the committee as well as program ideas. And you can call me at 715-453-4056 and let me know if you want to join and bring in your program ideas. Also, hobbshouse@gmail.com. Hobbs House, all lower letters. Our next meeting is going to be on election poll workers, which will be presented by Oneida County Clerk Tracy Hartman. And then we have people in the audience who have been poll workers that are going to make comments as well. And that will be March 8th at 10 a.m. on Zoom. And we definitely welcome program ideas and members, new members. So let me know. And I am turning it over to the Budget Committee.
Hi, this is Stu Dirksen with the Voter Services Team, and I'm excited to tell you about some of what Voter Services does. There's a lot of wonderful work and creative ideas with the volunteers that work with this group. This is really the backbone of empowering voters and defending democracy in the Northwoods. There are so many opportunities to engage the public, from the very youngest to the oldest folks, in understanding how important their part is in making democracy work from the ground up. People generally think that federal elections are the most important, but as we know, some of the biggest impact begins in our own communities. The decisions that are made by members of our elected townships, city, county boards, school boards, determine the services that are available and where the money is spent. One of the focuses of voter services is providing education leading to an informed voter. Vote 411 is an amazing tool that was developed by the League of Women Voters that works in tandem with My Vote, a resource to go to for registering to vote, checking on your registration status, polling place, requesting an absentee ballot, and all things election. However, a unique piece of Vote 411 is the Voter's Guide. This is a huge resource and education piece that's provided for all voters online. All candidates on your local ballot are invited to answer questions of interest to voters in their own words that voters can then go out on this guide and compare candidates side by side to get an idea of where they come in on the different issues and the questions. Voter services, through the help of volunteers in this spring election cycle, for instance, have contacted over 56 clerks, 13 school districts, just to get the candidate list. From there, we have reached out to over 200 candidates to get their email contact information so we can invite them to participate in this voter's guide. No small task, but so important. So if you haven't done it yet, check out vote411.org. It's really amazing what's out there. The other important focus that we're on currently, is growing the future voter. Assisting the schools and youth organizations in engaging young people of all ages to learn about the legislative process and why their opinion and their vote matters. Also, putting voter registration information in the hands of those approaching their 18th birthday so they will register and be ready to vote. I think I can safely say that there is something for everybody within voter services. Whatever amount of time you have that you could help out with things, and whatever your desire is, if you're like speaking in public and maybe helping with candidate forums, or if you're more of a kind of behind the scenes and you want to maybe organize some of our events or work with our communications or even sit at a registration table, we can use your help. An educated voter is an empowered voter, and we really hope that you'll consider helping us where you can. And I just have to put in a plug. In honor of the 102nd birthday of the League of Women Voters, which is February 14th, we put out a challenge to all of our members and friends to reach out to at least one or two people that are around the age of 18 and make sure they're registered, or ask them if they are, and give them the vote411.org website. Thank you, and I will pass this on to Petra and the CPRT team.
All right, thank you, Sue. So the CPRT team, Communications, Public Relations, and Technology, was formed in late 2020, several months into the pandemic, when digital technology had clearly become essential for us and other organizations around the world to continue our work in the absence of in-person gatherings. At that time, we also recognized the need for a more systematic approach to help ensure that all of our communications with the public are effective and high in quality. Likewise, the tech industry has responded to the pandemic environment by expanding the products it offers to help people and organizations get stuff done. This is happening so rapidly now that it is not unusual these days to use a common platform, major platform, and see it change, see that user interface change from day to day. Although the League of Women Voters organization is more than 100 years old now, we nonetheless have an ongoing need to keep up with the times and to modernize our communications and how we work. The word infrastructure traditionally conjures up images of roads, bridges, and the like. They are essential for us for getting around in the physical world. Today, We as an organization now require an IT infrastructure to effectively and safely navigate the digital world. Both types of infrastructure require planning, building, ongoing maintenance, improvements, and sometimes major overhauls. This, as you might guess, involves a fair amount of work. The CPRT team never runs out of things to do. We work closely with all of the groups that you are hearing about this evening. Our league is one of more than 700 local leagues across the nation, and all with similar communications and IT needs. And there are active collaborations among the leagues at every level, national, state, and local. Thanks to the general openness and collaboration among all leagues, there are many opportunities to share information and develop best practices for communications and IT. And those are the things that we have launched into, working with various leagues all over the country now. Our team provides training and tech support, as you might imagine. And sometimes it's the blind leading the blind. We figure these things out sometimes as we go along. There's a lot of just-in-time learning that takes place, and we don't always know what the solution is, but we seek it out, and then we share our learnings, and we're bringing all of us together further up this learning curve, the learning curve that may never end. This slide highlights the platforms that currently make up our league's IT infrastructure. We're all familiar with Zoom, I believe. Here we are. And of course, it has played a huge role during this pandemic in allowing people and organizations worldwide to continue working and being productive. And at this point, well into the pandemic, these virtual meetings have revealed themselves to have many advantages and conveniences that some of which we definitely don't want to give up. I believe they're here to stay, as are hybrid meetings, which are a combination of in-person and virtual meetings. Google Workspace. So as a nonprofit organization, we are able to use Google Workspace for free. So this is a major business platform consisting of integrated apps and tools, many common things that we're all familiar with: email, file creation and management, chat, virtual meetings, security and administration. And there are plenty of other apps and more coming all the time, it seems. So we recently launched our Google Workspace, and this should give us a very good basic IT foundation for the foreseeable future. As for internet and social media, of course, we have a website and we have a YouTube channel, which will have this recorded meeting on it within a couple of days, and also a presence in social media. We have a Facebook page, and we're on Instagram and Twitter. So finally, as a retired person with a fairly diverse IT experience, I love this volunteer work. This is just my niche. I had no idea how useful my skills would be in retirement at this point in my life, and it's a pleasure to be able to apply them and make a difference. So just to wrap it up, I mean, we are always looking to recruit new members into the league, and we'd love to see younger people in particular joining and bringing with them their unique skills and experiences. And by doing that, we can all work together to carry on the important work of informing and empowering voters and defending democracy. This work will never be finished. So with that, I will introduce Pam Taylor, who is filling in for our treasurer, Belinda Holben, to talk about the budget committee.
Great. Thanks, Petra. That's wonderful. I want to reiterate what everybody else has said, is that I have found it to be fun and stimulating to participate in this work. Some of my closest friends, I've developed close friendships with folks, and I have a deep sense of contributing to my community and doing something that has value, which makes my life richer all the time. Our budget, we believe and are committed to that our values are expressed in our budget, that we are completely transparent with our budget, the monies that come in, the people who donate. We put together a budget committee. This is a great way for people to get involved in little ways, because we only meet a couple of times before presenting a budget to the board and then to the membership at large to pass a budget. We operate on a fiscal year basis. The dues that you pay on an annual basis include your dues for the state of Wisconsin and the National League, and only $5 of your dues goes to our local league, and it hasn't been increased in a number of years, and we are looking to increase that amount because the expenses of our local league are changing and adjusting as we become more and more tech savvy and investing in communications in a variety of communications way. But everybody will be able to see our budget. It's transparent, where we're spending our money and the monies that we receive. Thank you. Let's see. Lori, Nominating Committee. Lori, you're muted, so we haven't been able to hear you thus far.
I'm sorry. The glitch comes. I am actually still recovering from having my eyes dilated, so I'm not seeing all that well, but I'm usually a little better than that. Can you hear me now? No. You can hear me?
Yes, we hear you. We hear you. It sounds great.
Sorry about that. I found this quote that I thought was very appropriate for the nominating committee. It's, your task is not to foresee the future, but to enable it. And so I feel like we try to do that when we help find people for important positions in the league. The nominating committee meets only in the months of January and February to find candidates for open board positions. The committee is comprised of a board member chair and 2 non-board members, so a very small committee, very limited time. The candidates for the open positions this year are treasurer, secretary, and a director, and they will be presented to the board in March, and then the membership in April, and voted on at our annual meeting in May. And at that time, nominations are open from the floor. So if your candidate isn't on the slate, there's still time. Or you can nominate yourself, which I don't think has ever happened, but could. The committee is committed to diversifying our board whenever possible. Any suggestions you might have to increase the diversity of our leadership and our membership are most welcome. In addition to the open board positions, this committee is charged with selecting their own replacements, which will happen in April. So now is the time to raise your hand. This is an excellent opportunity to dip your toe into the league waters, a short duration commitment, and a great way to meet your fellow members. Please consider raising your hand by sending an email to information@lwvnow.org. LWVNOW.org. Thanks for considering this. And now Petra will tell you about an exciting opportunity to have a front row seat at all levels of local government through our Observer Corps. Take it away, Petra.
All right, thank you, Lori. All right, well, we need to start with just defining the sunshine laws. This refers to laws that exist at both federal level and state level. They're all about providing access to the public to government meetings and records. Every state in the country has sunshine laws as well, and in some cases even localities do. So the whole point of this is to promote government transparency and accountability. So leagues, the League of Women Voters, some leagues choose to have an Observer Corps program, and we decided to institute one back in 3 years ago, almost in 2019. And I sort of spearheaded that, and we have a few people who are participating right now. Would love to see many more. The Observer Corps is a structured way for league members. We have just league members who are participating at this point to exercise this right to know. And based on what we learn from attending government meetings and all, we are able to then pass on to citizens information that may be important for them to know about what's going on in government. Whoop. So how does this work? Well, if someone, a league member who's interested would choose a government body to attend their meetings on a regular basis. And generally people are interested in their own particular government, of course. And so the idea is to regularly attend those meetings and find out what's going on and to watch what's going on as well. So it's a matter of attending and learning about the issues, but also watching the process of government. As such, these Observer Corps league members become ambassadors for the League of Women Voters. And we strive also to have a good understanding of the league policies and positions. The positions of the league are pretty consistent throughout the organization at every level and are documented on the appropriate websites. Another neat thing about attending these meetings, finding out what's going on and being able to observe firsthand, not to mention the nonverbal communication that goes on at meetings, is the chance to get to know our government officials. You also get to know the media representatives and fellow citizens. Oh, and the more one attends, the more you kind of get into that groove of being part of that group that is involved in our government doing its thing. So as we watch meetings, a lot of the proceedings are pretty perfunctory at times, and sometimes can be downright boring, but actually not all that often in my experience. Issues come up. There are all sorts of things going on, and we want to be on the lookout for issues that are things that we as a league might want to take action on and elevate and to publicize or to address in whatever way is appropriate. So this is an opportunity to share information and to just in general educate people about what's going on with our government. I'll just tell my story briefly, I started attending the Oneida County Administration Committee meetings back in 2019. So it's been about 3 years now. I chose this particular committee because it's a key committee for the county. They're the ones who work up the budget that will be approved by the full board. And they also approve all funding allocations. So this is, if there's something, anything that involves money, observing the administration committee will expose you to that, what's going on. So at any rate, it's sort of like my sports. I'm not much of a spectator. I like to participate in things rather than just sit and watch. So where I'm at right now, what's happened is I became so interested and watching what's going on, realizing that, hey, I can do that. And you know what? I can do that better. So now, and I'm not saying better than everybody, we do have 21 white male members on the Oneida County Board. It would be nice to have a little more diversity. And I know I can do the job. So I am now a candidate for County Board Supervisor. So that's a warning. If you get involved with this, you might just really get drawn into the vortex of local government, and I couldn't be happier about it. So it's kind of an exciting time now, campaigning for the first time, and we'll see where it goes with the spring election. So just to close, I wish, I'm a little disappointed that I haven't been able to round up more people to participate. We only have 4 people that I know of who are regularly attending meetings, but I'm hoping that over time we can get more people interested, because there's nothing like really knowing what's going on and understanding the issues and being informed about our government and knowing what works well and what needs to be changed. So it's just doing the democracy thing. So with that, I will pass it on to Dorothy Sky, who is going to address.
Wait a sec, Petra. We're going to take a minute for questions, to receive questions and answers, and from our folks, and then we will certainly pass it on to Dorothy, who is so knowledgeable in the history of the league and everything. But thank you so much for your good presentation, and we're rooting for you. The league is nonpartisan but political organization. We are gathering information and really committed to intelligent, informed electorate, and that is really the core of the work that we are always working on and trying to do. I want to just take a breath and give a moment to folks here to put questions into the chat or chime in at this moment. Unmute yourself and ask a question if you have one. You can also hold up your little blue hand if you know how to click on a blue hand in the participants list, and I can recognize you if that's easier for you.
Everybody's been so explanatory.
Right.
I have a question.
Yay. Ask away.
Well, thanks everybody for your presentations. That was very enlightening, and good to know that the league is involved in all these efforts. Actually, I have 2 questions, so I'll start with my first one. Is the league at all involved with the question of redistricting and fair maps? I guess that's my first question, so I'll mute myself now.
Who would like to respond best to that?
I will.
All right, thank you, Dorothy.
The answer is big time. The League of Women Voters has been in this struggle from the get-go, and we are not going to quit till it's a done deal. We have we proposed maps that are being considered by the courts in this final push and argument of stuff. We have legal cases lined up as needed. We've had webinars, we do social media blitzes.
They had a lawsuit against you.
Plenty of involvement.
Thank you, Dorothy. Other questions?
Well, I understood that Beth had a second question, and I would just say, Beth, who you just heard from was the president of the state league, so she knows what's what. But you said you had a second question, and you're muted, so there you go.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dorothy. That's good to know. My second question is for Jane. I was wondering where the diversity, inclusion, and equity effort lies at this point.
Well, that's a convenient question because we have someone in the audience who can also address it if she would like to. We're waiting for we're waiting for a meeting with one of the tribal agencies because we'd like to involve them in this effort. The intent that I understand so far is that the outreach is multi-pronged. It's with several nonprofits in this region, as I mentioned. And the intent is to train a group of people. It's almost like an Oneida County leadership program with a monthly educational series and then perhaps with a capstone project on diversity, equity, inclusivity, and justice. And so it's evolving, Beth, but it should be coming to fruition very soon. We have a trainer, a nationally recognized trainer in DEIJ. So stay tuned. I'm not sure if the person in the audience would like to speak any further about that, but Jesse, you're able, I see you're on camera.
Sorry, the 2 minutes I had to run upstairs to put. Yes, so it is a collaboration between WXPR, Art Start, the Minocqua Chamber. Jane, I'm sorry if you have mentioned all this before, and the Demmer Memorial Library in Three Lakes. And the Melinda Childs, who is kind of leading the effort working with the facilitator, will be meeting with different tribal representatives throughout the next month or so to try to add additional people to this small cohort that's doing some of the planning. So it started with the 4 organizations. We had met with Jane and Beth and who else? Pam was also on that call, I think.
Lori.
Lori representing the league as well. And just saying you're working towards this, we're working towards this. Let's see if we can collaborate as organizations in the Northwoods. And the idea is to have a program and what we're calling a community practice of learning, and hopefully get community leaders to learn a little bit more and have discussion that they can then bring back to their organizations or their places of business to share and to learn. And so that's basically what is in the works for right now. So we're at the point where we're still looking for members to be part of that original planning committee, as we're calling it now, and then expanding to welcome community members as well. So should I miss anything, Jane?
I can just add that we're looking at diversity, equity, inclusivity, and justice very broadly.
Yes.
From literacy to ethnicity to race, religion, to gender identity, to socioeconomic variables too. So we're looking at this with a wide lens. Jesse, thank you.
And I'll just add that the use of collaboration is really put to use with the DEIJ initiative at the local league level, at the state and national. Collaboration is what it's all about, and we're finding very quickly that that is so effective.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All about collaborating.
And I would add here that this is a great place for new members to jump in and be part of a team. And, you know, there are lots of opportunities here. And if you want to get more involved, then you don't have to, because we're a no guilt organization. But if you want to get involved and meet some fabulous people, you just need to reach out and let us know what sounds good to you. And you're there.
Absolutely. Are there other questions of folks that are attending today? We want to make sure that we have a lot to say, but we want to be responsive to where people are at and what they want to ask. We'll continue to move on. And then if you think of a question, you can ask it in the chat during this program. But we are available all the time, all of us as individuals, about the various committees and teams that we work on, about the league, and are easy to get in contact with. Now I am going to hand it over to the very knowledgeable and experienced Dorothy to talk about the league as a whole. Thanks, Dorothy.
You bet. I hope to send you all off with a final lift of inspiration from the history of the League of Women Voters, and the creation of which was a necessary follow-on to the achievement of women's suffrage. And I'm going to start sharing my screen. We got that going? All right. I'll ask you to project yourselves into the historical events and focus on the images of our predecessors in this 10-minute glimpse into the history behind the League of Women Voters logo. Let's start with the Seneca Falls Convention, which attracted approximately 300 people to the Wesleyan Chapel in a hamlet in the Finger Lakes region of upstate New York on July 19th and 20th of 1848. The convention was organized by Lucretia Mott, a Quaker famous for her oratory ability in an age when women weren't supposed to speak in public, and a non-Quaker writer and activist, Elizabeth Cady Stanton. This event and the declaration issued by its attendees marked the beginning of the so-called women's rights movement. The main outcome of the convention was the Declaration of Sentiments, which was signed by 68 women and 32 men after vigorous debate. The declaration begins by asserting the equality of all men and women and reiterates that both genders are endowed with unalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, intentionally echoing the words of the Declaration of Independence. It addresses the particulars of women's oppression at the time, including lack of women's suffrage and participation and representation in government, their lack of property rights in marriage, and their inequality in divorce law, and their inequality in education and employment opportunities. The document insists that women be viewed as full citizens of the United States and be granted all the same rights and privileges that were granted to men. The only resolution in the Declaration that was not unanimously adopted was the 9th, ironically, which urged the women of the United States to secure for themselves the elective franchise. In other words, the vote. Those who took part in the debate feared that a demand for the right to vote would lead to continued denial of the other rights covered by the other resolutions that they deemed more rational, and would make the whole movement seem ridiculous. But Mrs. Stanton and Mr. Frederick Douglass, seeing that the power to choose rulers and make laws, as they said, was the right by which all others could be secured, and they persistently advocated for the resolution and led to its being passed by the smallest majority. Indeed, the resolution that we remember the most, that initiated the women's suffrage movement, passed by the aye vote of an African American, Frederick Douglass. Who among you knew that? In the subsequent struggle for universal civil rights, Black and white participants have joined and parted ways from time to time. For instance, the movers and shakers behind the 1868 passage of the 14th Amendment to the Constitution chose wording for Section 2 that enforces only the right of male inhabitants to vote in federal elections. And it was Frederick Douglass who was emphatic that the right of male inhabitants to vote in federal elections should be accomplished before focusing on women's suffrage. Furthermore, another Reconstruction movement, the 15th, passed in 1870, uses the deliberately chosen words that, quote, "The right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged on the basis of race, color, or previous condition of servitude." The use of the word citizen and the omission of the word sex were intentional and had long-standing consequences. So the issue of racism is a continuous thread throughout the women's suffrage movement and extends on into the DEI-J movement, in which we are enthusiastically involved at this point. The original white suffragists separated racial equality from electoral equality. They feared upsetting the Southern voters and officials. They feared complicating the suffrage cause. So a quintessential example of this was in the 1913 suffrage parade in Washington, D.C., when the Black delegations were assigned to march in the rear. Well, they just didn't put up with that. They marched on ahead, in particular, Ida B. Wells marched right up to the Illinois delegation, which was all white until she arrived, and put herself right up front there. Here we see the Wisconsin delegation from the delegation of women's clubs of Wisconsin in that parade. And so the struggle continued for 72 years, from 1848 to 1920. And that was no easy struggle. Wisconsin suffragists, like those in other states, used every means of communication, persuasion, and public spectacle they could come up with. In Wisconsin, it was a long slog and a seemingly hopeless campaign. You see the dates here from 1869, when women temporarily were allowed to run for school board positions and vote in school elections, but then that was taken away. And in fact, between 1899 and 1915, there were no further than 21 attempts in Wisconsin, the Wisconsin Senate and Assembly, to enfranchise women in various ways, but each attempt failed. Until all of a sudden it happened in 1919. And Wisconsin was the first to officially ratify the amendment. However, notice it took until 1934 for the Wisconsin Constitution to be amended to grant women's suffrage. These are just a few faces and gatherings of women that were involved in Wisconsin. Olympia Brown there in the lower left corner was really the only one of the first generation suffragists who lived long enough to vote. And I'm not going to go into the details of the biographies and so forth of each of these women, but I would encourage you to read a book by Genevieve McBride, who I don't know if she's still a professor, but she was a professor of history, women's history at UW Milwaukee. And her book on Wisconsin women is a well-told tale, thoroughly researched. And here's a picture of showing off the Wisconsin ratification document. Wisconsin was the first to register to get the official seal on the ratification because of a scheme to hasten the travel of the folks that were carrying that declaration back to Washington, D.C. And it was all in the impetus of beating out Illinois, because the Illinois legislature ratified the amendment first, but they got on a later train and didn't make it to D.C. The end result was the final ratification in August of 1920, and that was by the ratification from the state of Tennessee by one vote, by the way. And then the final certification in August of 1920. The League of Women Voters was formed even before the final ratification, just before. It was formed by dissolving the National American Women's Suffrage Association into the League of Women Voters at Nassau's last convention in February of 1920. And remember, the final ratification was in August of 1920. The stated purpose of doing this was to finish the fight and bring women into the political mainstream. And we are now rowing our boats in that mainstream, sometimes with the current, sometimes against the flow. Jessie Jack Hooper was elected the first president of the League of Women Voters. And you notice it was formed in February 1920 as well, just less than 2 weeks after the formation of the National League. With her quote that, "Heed the call, the League is established, the League has power. How best shall we use this power to become a vital and helping force in our state and nation? How best continue in the work of educating a conscientious, well-informed electorate?" So that's what we're still working on. So I'll end there with one last little slide pitching Vote 411 and one pitching the website for the State League.
Thank you, Dorothy. And again, we want to open it up for questions of Dorothy or any of our team that's been presented this evening. If anybody has any questions, now is the time to chirp in, either unmute yourself and ask the question, put it in the chat, or raise your little blue hand on the participants list. And we'd, or if you have a comment, if it's not a question, if you'd just like to make a comment, please do. Ah, Jessie, you can see that, Dorothy. She says, thanks, that was very interesting. We are and always will be tied to the women's suffrage movement. It's an important part of our history. Lori.
This is a question for Louise. Is she still here? Oh, there she is.
I'm here.
Louise,
Yes.
what is the book that we read all about the suffrage vote and getting there? That was just so fascinating. Do you remember the name of that book? Or
I
does
do
anyone
not
else?
remember the name of the book.
I know, I'm trying to remember it too. We watched the movie on the interview with the author from this.
If you haven't read the book, we'll try to figure it out and post it on the website. But you know how it's, Pete, do you remember?
Yes, it's called the Women's Hour by Elaine Weiss.
Right, the Woman's
And
Hour.
It deals with that final ratification conference in Tennessee, the last state to ratify. And it's written like a historical drama. And it's a good read, but it's only that small port. Covers 3 weeks of the 72-year fight, but it's a great book.
Yes.
It's a thriller, even though you know the outcome. It just,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to say. You know how it's going to end, and yet you're just on the edge of your seat. So if you're interested in how this vote came about in the first place, read the Woman's Hours. Excellent.
Yes, and a mother pounds the ear of her son who has a vote. It's great.
That was the deciding vote. Yep.
That's right. I'm here with, sorry, oops. I'm here with Joan Hauer, and she would like to have a question.
All right.
Go for it.
Well, I don't have a question, but I want to just tell you briefly about my experience with League. When I was a newly married, stupid young woman with married way too young, I waited until I was 21 because that was the age to join League, because I had heard, I lived in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, and that was a really interesting group of people. And I had the wonderful opportunity of joining at a time when there were Republicans and Democrats, you know, all working in their parties, but working together. And one of the really moving forces in the Wisconsin League, really, and she's still renowned, is Meg McLean, who was a woman who came with her husband, who was an internist in the community. She was a nurse, educated in the East, and that was very suspect because Fond du Lac's very conservative and continues to be to this day in probably a more conservative way. And she introduced all these ideas that women could, you know, it was still the housewife era. What's her name, who wrote the book, you know, that blew us all out of the house. You know who I can't think of, anyway, that book was being just discussed and
Bella Obzucker.
anyway.
Feminine Mystique.
Eddie Friedan.
Yes, that was just, if you read it, you probably didn't tell everybody you knew you read it. That was just a beginning thing. So here, this woman comes from out east, so she's suspect anyway, because if you haven't lived in Fond du Lac and your parents haven't lived there, you're never a native. You're just an outsider with weird ideas. So she introduced all these ideas about women getting out and getting active. And at that time we studied issues, and one of the issues was the city government. And we had a mayor who wasn't the most straight-laced person, and we ended up studying city government, and by God, they changed to a city manager. And I remember meeting some of my friends' mothers who would say, they'd try to get me into joining other things. And when I mentioned the league, they'd say, oh, that's really bad for your husband's business, because it was so radical. So it's just, I had the most wonderful experience, introduction into league. And I just wish, I want to see that spirit of study and taking positions and really acting on them, sustained. And I hope we can attract some young people because we need that energy for the future. And I guess that's it, but it's been great. Yeah.
A couple of things relative to that. Number one, every year at the annual meeting, the State League awards the annual Meg McLean Award to someone who's had in the league who's had outstanding accomplishments.
Right.
Also, with regard to the age thing, two little tidbits. Number one, our annual meeting this year is going to be themes all about youth, getting young people involved in running for office and voting and so on and so forth. And you mentioned waiting until you were 21, was it, to be a voting member of the league?
That era, right.
Well, now it's 16. as of the last annual meeting, and the League of Women Voters of Wisconsin is putting forward a proposition to eliminate age bias altogether as a voting requirement for the league. So if there's an inspired 13-year-old who wants to go to the meeting and speak up and so forth, he or she should be able to vote. That's our contention, and we've sent it out to all the state leagues, and we are taking opinions at this point, but it will come up at the national convention in June.
Thank you, Dorothy, and thank you, Joan. Is there anything else that anybody would like to chime in and say and share? I hope that you guys, that everyone here has found this meaningful. Kathy.
Yeah, I want to thank all of you for a very effective presentation and very thorough. I certainly learned so much more than I anticipated by coming tonight. And I had questions also about, what have you done? What are you doing to become more accessible to younger people, or appealing, I guess is the word. I look around and here we are, the same demographic exactly that is at all the meetings doing. Yeah, and so I was curious, and that might be a whole presentation in itself, but thank you, and I would love to hear some brief comments on that anyways.
Yeah, Kathy, I'll just say we've been very active in voter registration efforts at the high schools, and using the student service groups to help out with that. And we've done candidate forums for school board. One particular in Rhinelander where the students just ran the whole thing. They came up with the questions, they moderated it, they just did splendidly. So that's a couple of examples. We were starting a student unit of the Northwoods League when the pandemic came along and put that in abeyance for a while.
Yeah.
But any ideas that you or anybody else has about involving youth? And again, there's going to be a lot of good stuff at the Wisconsin State League meeting.
Well, Kathy, I'll also let you know that Sue, do you want to speak to the grant?
Sure, I would love to. You know, as I noted when I was talking about voter services, our big focus, one of them, is working to grow that youth vote. And we currently are very excited because we have taken off in a direction of how do we work collaboratively with other organizations, with the schools. We just, it was week before last, got together with some of our community members, not even all league members, and said, hey, we really want to pick your brain because you are closer to either organizations that youth are working with or the schools, or you have kids that age, and said exactly what you asked, how do we engage them? How do we reach them? So right now we are formulating our plan that we are kicking into gear like within 3 weeks to really start collaborating with other organizations to get more involved with those schools and to meet kids where they are. That's one of our biggest challenges because it's, you know, if you know about kids, which we all have kids or grandkids, they don't communicate like we do. And so we're very fortunate to have some groups that we're starting to work with that we're pretty encouraged about what's to come. So keep watching. We try to keep everybody in the league updated with what we're doing, but you will see a little bit different tact with what we're doing with kids over the next 3, 4, 5, 6 months to a year. A lot of opportunity out there.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sue. Yeah, we're cutting the binds of bureaucracy that we all were raised in, which is a challenge because we were all taught how to do things in a certain way, and we certainly know that young people are doing them differently, and we are preparing the way to be open for those changes. Other comments or questions? Jane Banning.
I guess, Kathy, if you have thoughts and suggestions about it, get a hold of me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And I do also want to say, I think it's great that you're doing these meetings virtually because I am very newly retired, but I know friends have gone to a meeting in years past, and then the traveling to go to other meetings just was, you know, daunting for them. So this is a wonderful opportunity to really keep people engaged. So
Teacher,
thank you, COVID, for that.
Talk about hybrid meeting plans,
Right.
technology.
Sure. So in this strange period we're in now, you know, it was kind of easier at the beginning. We all went into isolation and that was easy enough. Virtual meetings. Then we came out for a while and then we saw our shadows and now we're all somewhere in between. But since then, of course, we relied on Zoom exclusively, and along came new technology for hybrid meetings where you could have both in person and also where people can join via Zoom. And in fact, this is in regular use now by the Oneida County Board, the full board, and also various committees. There's a piece of equipment, I think it's the most popular one now, is called an OWL, and it's like a 360 camera, which also has microphones, and you hook it up to a computer, and you have this OWL in the middle of your meeting, the group in person, and then you have a computer monitor and other people can join in and interact, and everybody can see each other. The virtual people can see the people in the room. And in fact, I had alluded to this, that, you know, there are these wonderful conveniences. They're not going to go away anytime soon. And there are county board members who are able now to attend meetings they wouldn't otherwise be able to attend because they are elsewhere. And so that makes for, you know, more actual voting members present and more interaction and better attendance. Likewise, like for myself, I am attending even more meetings now as a candidate because I want to learn about what all the committees are doing. I can do that right here. In fact, I did that this morning. I attended the Board of Health meeting, and people joining virtually, of course, county board members are full voting, they're full participants, and the public can also join in, make comments. And so it's a wonderful technology for that, for those hybrid meetings. And it's not going away. And hopefully we'll be buying one soon.
Yeah, 1,000. What is it? Okay, great.
Other comments or questions? We appreciate you so much taking the time to listen to this story as we develop it. And every year now, we want to have a meeting that's dedicated to communication, to draw the circle wider, include more people, and that's always centermost at what we're trying to accomplish. So we appreciate you all attending and look forward to working with you more in the future. Does anybody want to make a final comment before we end?
Yo, you said we started with what, 6 members? How many members do we have now?
We're at like 62, 65, somewhere in that range.
65 was the last I heard.
Good.
Nancy.
Hey, I just want to say thank you. I'm so glad that you all got me on here. I think it was Lori that I lost my, nice to see who you are.
You too, Nancy.
Yeah,
Joan, of course, and I'm really happy to do this because this gave me a lot of information and a lot to think about.
Oh,
So
good.
I'm really glad I got on.
I hope we'll see you volunteering for things in the future.
We got to
Great.
so, but it definitely piqued my interest.
Good.
Thanks.
Thank you. That's great. Anybody else? Hey, thank you all so much for attending. And we will be gathering together again soon.
Good night.
Goodbye.
Yeah.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.